Sarah Cooper stared at her computer screen at nearly midnight, eyes burning from analyzing spreadsheets that refused to balance. Her small living room lamp cast lonely shadows on the chipped walls, while the quiet hum of a humidifier droned from her 4-year-old son Nate's bedroom. With a weary sigh, she saved her work and closed the laptop. No matter how many times she recast the numbers, her paycheck no longer covered rent, groceries, and babysitter fees. She glanced at the small stack of overdue bills and silently prayed for a miracle that could make the figures work. She rose from the chair and tiptoed to Nate's room, where the boy slept hugging his beloved plush T-Rex. The nightlight revealed his gentle features. Her heart twisted at the thought of how she might soon need to cut corners even more. Maybe give up his swim lessons or the small, cozy apartment near her job. Tears pricked her eyes, but she brushed them away. She'd promised herself from the moment she learned she was pregnant. She would be strong enough for two. Morning came too soon, heralded by a harsh alarm. Sarah dragged herself from bed, intent on taking Nate to preschool before rush hour. But a quick forehead check revealed he was flushed with fever. At 101.3, he couldn't attend preschool. Panicked, Sarah contemplated taking a sick day but dismissed the idea. She was behind on reports and short on money. The babysitter, Elena, had already quit over late payments. With no one else to help, she realized she had no choice but to bring Nate to work. Bundling him into the car, she packed medicine, snacks, a tablet loaded with kid-friendly games, and headed for the towering glass building of Morrison Enterprises. She'd worked there 5 years, building a solid reputation in the accounting department. Now, leading a crucial quarter-end project, she couldn't risk her job. Nate, drowsy from the fever, clung to her as she walked through the sleek lobby. She tried ignoring curious glances from polished executives. Her small, private office after her last promotion was at least a blessing. She could keep Nate nearby. She eased him onto a small sofa in the corner, gave him medication, and flicked on cartoons. He fell in and out of a light sleep while she tackled spreadsheets. The day started better than she expected. Her colleagues, noticing Nate, brought quiet offers of help, juice boxes, a warm blanket, children's books. It both relieved and embarrassed her, but she pressed on, determined to prove she could handle this. At lunchtime, she realized she was behind on a major analysis for James Morrison, the newly appointed CEO. He was known for his intimidating presence and relentless pursuit of perfection. The last thing she needed was to appear unprofessional, especially with a sick child in tow. Yet she juggled calls and comforted Nate, fueling herself on stale coffee. By mid-afternoon, her phone buzzed, an urgent departmental meeting in the main boardroom. Her heart sank. She asked Amanda, her junior analyst, to watch Nate, but he was restless from the fever and refused to let her go. Not wanting a meltdown, she decided to keep him with her, pleading silently that he'd stay quiet during her brief presentation. She slipped into the large conference room, setting Nate in a corner seat with coloring books. The meeting began, led by James Morrison himself, tall, broad-shouldered, and impeccable in a tailored suit. He spoke with clipped authority about the quarter's challenges. Sarah felt jittery, hoping Nate wouldn't disturb the proceedings. Then, in the middle of Morrison's speech, Nate let out a soft cough. Heads turned. Morrison's gaze zeroed in on Nate. The little boy raised big brown eyes from his T-Rex drawing, spotted the imposing CEO, and in a moment of childlike clarity blurted, "Dad." The entire room froze. Sarah's pulse thundered. She'd never seen Morrison so startled, confusion flickering across his face. Someone coughed. Others exchanged wide-eyed looks. Sarah felt each second crawl. She rushed to scoop Nate up, muttering apologies, and fled the silent room. Minutes later, Morrison's assistant demanded Sarah appear in his office immediately. Sarah left Nate with Amanda again, hurrying to the top floor. Heart pounding, Morrison stood by the glass window, arms folded. When he turned, his expression was a mix of anger and something akin to shock. "Explain," he said coldly. Sarah felt pinned by his piercing green eyes. She had no choice but to reveal the truth of that one night at a conference years ago in Chicago. How she'd only recognized him months ago by pure coincidence. Stunned, he demanded a DNA test. She bristled, refusing hush money or anything that reduced her son to a transaction. But Morrison insisted on secrecy and threatened consequences if the story got out. She stormed out, chest tight with anger. The next days brought mounting tension, until the test results returned, 99.9999% probability. Sarah handed him the results in a sealed envelope. He read them stone-faced, then repeated his demand to keep it quiet. Furious at his coldness, she argued that Nate deserved a father, not a cover-up. They parted with raw tempers. Unexpectedly, a crisis shifted everything. Nate developed pneumonia. Desperate, Sarah rushed him to an expensive hospital. To her astonishment, Morrison arrived, using his influence to ensure top care. He stayed by Nate's bedside, apparently shaken by the boy's condition. In that sterile room, something changed. The CEO who had threatened her days ago now paced corridors, tense with worry, stepping in to hold Nate's hand, reading him stories, or gently adjusting his pillow. Each night, Sarah saw flickers of genuine concern in his eyes, a father's concern. When Nate finally recovered, Morrison continued to visit. Slowly, warily, Sarah let him spend more time with their son, reading bedtime stories, strolling in the park, or guiding him through a puzzle. At first, he was stiff, uncertain how to handle an energetic 4-year-old. But each small success, teaching Nate to catch a ball, laughing at his dinosaur jokes, eased him. Nate called him Dad more confidently, and Morrison, though visibly uncomfortable, stopped flinching at the title. He admitted he'd grown up with an emotionally distant father and feared repeating that mistake. Over weeks, they formed a new routine. Morrison joined dinners at Sarah's apartment or brought Nate to his penthouse for short visits. Once proud and aloof, he now knelt on the floor building block towers or assembled dinosaur figurines. Co-workers, once abuzz with rumors, saw a softer side of the fearsome CEO. Sarah, initially resisting any illusions, found herself touched by his sincerity. He engaged in small fatherhood lessons, like learning which stuffed toy Nate needed to sleep, or how to soothe his nightmares. Meanwhile, at the company, Sarah discovered suspicious transactions pointing to Morrison's close friend, Robert Sterling, embezzling funds. Alarmed, she confided in Morrison. She worried he'd be in denial, but he believed her. Hurt though he was, together, they set a trap. Late nights saw them hunched over spreadsheets in Morrison's office after hours, Nate dozing nearby. They discovered Robert was funneling assets into a shell corporation, planning to launch a rival firm. One final cunning move from Robert triggered their sting. Money was transferred, and they caught him in the act. Robert was arrested. Sarah's whistleblowing saved the firm millions. In a public meeting, Morrison praised her courage and integrity, naming her the new CFO. Standing at the front with Nate in her arms, Sarah felt stunned and grateful as colleagues applauded. Morrison's gaze was warm, pride evident. He knelt, gave Nate a gentle hug, tears in his eyes. No one doubted the sincerity of his transformation. Their father-son bond deepened. Morrison overcame old fears, realized genuine love made him stronger, not weaker. On weekends, he took Nate to museums or taught him mini science experiments. He apologized earnestly to Sarah for his initial coldness. One evening, after Nate's bedtime, they found themselves alone in her living room. "I'm sorry," he said softly, "for every threat. Every time I tried to push you away." She accepted, emotional at how far they'd come. Nate had guided them to see each other as more than adversaries, co-parents building a shared future. Eventually, that future expanded beyond co-parenting. Afternoons together turned into shared laughter. The cynicism with which Sarah once regarded Morrison's intentions melted, replaced by admiration for a man who broke free from his father's shadow. Meanwhile, Morrison discovered genuine partnership in Sarah, someone who challenged him, helped him see beyond profit margins to the people who mattered. They took Nate to a local fair, where he squealed on a small carousel, pointing to Morrison each time he passed, shouting, "Dad, watch me." In that swirl of lights and laughter, Morrison gently clasped Sarah's hand. She felt her chest tighten with an almost overwhelming happiness. Remembering how improbable this moment was just months prior, he whispered, "I never expected this, but I'm grateful every day." She squeezed his hand, nodding in shared relief. At bedtime that night, Nate insisted both parents read him a story. In the glow of a single lamp, they took turns narrating about a dinosaur family forging unexpected friendships. Nate fell asleep between them, his breathing soft and even. Sarah and Morrison locked eyes over his small form, each realizing they were forging not just separate paths, but something truly unified. Their nightly hush was saturated with acceptance and hope. Later, alone on her couch, Sarah stared at a picture of them all smiling at the fair. Her phone buzzed, a text from Morrison, "Thank you for giving me the best gift, a family." She replied simply, "We made it together." The next day, she found him in the nursery they'd set up at his penthouse, painting T-Rex murals. He paused, paintbrush in hand, telling her he'd cleared half his schedule to be more present in Nate's life. She teased him about board members complaining, but he answered quietly, "I won't miss more precious moments. Not when I've learned what's truly important." Even at the company, changes followed: better daycare perks, family-friendly hours. Morrison's employees whispered that their notoriously demanding boss had become surprisingly empathetic. Morale soared. The executive playground, once a sterile corner, now bustled with employees' children, forming new bonds beyond cubicles. One morning, Sarah discovered a heartfelt card on her desk: "Thank you for letting me be part of your world," and his, signed with a simple James. She felt tears welling up, recalling how they'd once stood on opposite sides, united only by suspicion and pride. Now, they were forging a different path, side by side. When eventually they moved in together, it wasn't the press scandal Morrison once feared, but a quiet, private celebration. Their final statement wasn't to tabloids but to each other and to Nate. That home is built on love, daily gestures of caring, and the courage to heal old wounds. In the end, Sarah's greatest struggle, providing for Nate, had led them to discover a father, a partner, and a new sense of belonging. Sometimes, a single day in a boardroom can unleash events that topple old walls, building the chance for a real family. And they learn that the best gifts seldom come in the forms we expect. They might wear dinosaur pajamas, trust wholeheartedly, and call the most intimidating man in the room Dad in front of everyone, changing all their lives forever.